Hi guys, welcome to this technical sound design demo made by me. You've already watched what all features this demo has, and right now we are going to walk through the breakdown of this whole thing about how I made this. So I wanted to walk you through what my thought process was behind designing this thing. So what I wanted to mainly achieve was an ambient system that is both procedural and reactive with a blend of static and dynamic sounds in it. So the main elements of this demo were the water sounds, a dynamic wind system, and a dynamic and reactive wildlife system, which included both the footsteps of animals and bird calls. Okay, so let's first of all look at the wave sounds that I've imported into the level. So let's go to the content browser here. So what I've done is I've designed 4 of these wave splash sounds in Ableton and imported them to Unreal Engine. So let's look at the sound cube that I've designed. So there's 4 wave players, each one corresponding to each wave splash sound that I mentioned earlier. So these are going to this random node which selects one of them at random. Then this goes to the modulator node, which gives it a bit of a natural touch as it varies in pitch and volume. Then it goes to the delay node, as there's like 4 or 5 of these audio sources placed inside the level. So I wanted all of them to go off at like different times to sound more natural. So after that, it goes to the looping node because I wanted them to go off periodically, as in waves crashing in a lake. So finally, it goes to the output node. So as you can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these wave audio sources placed along the edge of the lake. All of these play together and in a very natural rhythm to give us the sound of the lake. So now let's just move on to the procedural wind system that I designed. So my goal with this was to create a blend of static and dynamic sounds to make the whole wind system sound more natural. So to do that, I divided the wind into 3 types. So the first one is the bass wind, which is static. It's just a loop that plays over and over. Then is wind gusts through trees. So these are winds in the mid frequencies, and a rustle of leaves. So these are winds in the higher frequencies. So these two blend in together to create the procedural system, which basically means that I have different audio sources that spawn in the level at different positions, and these positions change every 10 seconds. So I'll just jump into the blueprint and show you how that looks. Okay, so let's dive into the audio cue blueprint that I have for the wind system. So what is happening here is I have wave players playing the wind gust sounds, and each of these wave players are connected to delay nodes to make sure that they go off at different times, and a random node to make sure only one of them is selected at random. I wanted these sounds to be looping, so I added a looping node, and then there's a modulator node to make sure that it sounds more natural by varying the pitch and volume. So because I wanted the sounds to go off at the same time, as in like I wanted multiple sounds to play at the same time, what I did was I copied this generator 4 different times and connected these to the mixer channel. And what I did was I did the same thing with the rustle sounds. So there are 4 different wave players corresponding to 4 different wind rustle sounds, and the signal flow is the same, and all these connect to the mixer node, and I have adjusted their volumes to make it blend in with the level, and all of this goes to the output channel. After this, it goes to one other blueprint that I'll show you right now. Okay, so what is happening here in this next blueprint is what I wanted to do was to create an actor which just has an audio component in the viewport. And as the event begins, like the whole level begins to play, I wanted to set a volume multiplier, and I've created a random float in range node to make sure that the volume multiplier is random every single time. That will add a whole other level of immersion to make, like, by making the wind sound more natural. Then what I'm basically just telling it to do is to play the audio component every time the level is loaded. This is important because I am calling this whole blueprint in one other blueprint that handles all the logic of the procedural system, which I'll show you next. Welcome to the brain of the procedural system for the wind. So what is happening here is I went ahead and created a custom event called spawn wind, and after that I've created a for loop which I've ordered to choose 20 different points. So what is happening at these points is I am asking it to spawn the actor blueprint, which is the wind source that I showed you just earlier, and to choose where the points will spawn. What I'm doing is basically creating a box collision area called the spawn area, and I'm going to place it in my level. So this spawn area, I'm getting the world location for it and the size of it, and then I'm telling it to choose a random point in the bounding box. So that means it will choose one single point, and I'm feeding that value to the spawn transform to give it the coordinates of the point that will spawn the wind source blueprint. So after all of this is done, it will spawn 20 different uh, points, which each of the point will have like a separate audio source to it. So in those points, what I'm doing is, as the event begin play happens, as in like the level loads, there will be a set timer by function name, and the function that I'm calling is the spawn wind function, which is the custom event that I've created. And every 10 seconds this function will be called, and that means 20 different points will be selected every 10 seconds. And I've selected the looping to be on, and after this I've just told it to spawn the wind function, as in like call this custom event that I've just created down there. And that is how the procedural wind system is working. Now that we have seen how my dynamic wind system works, let's move on to the wildlife system that I've created. So my goal with this was to again make it sound as natural as possible. So to add a different level of challenge to it and to challenge myself even more, I wanted to make it sound reactive. So my basic plan was to add a twig to the level, and every time the player goes and steps on the twig, I want the birds to be scared, and they'll make more bird calls, higher intensity, and the animals walking around, they go quiet. So this wildlife system is basically a blend of procedural and reactive sounds. So the wildlife system is, again, as I said, is divided into two different sounds, which are the animal footsteps and the bird calls. So let's see how I made it. Now let's just go through the wildlife system that I created. So the procedural part of it is very similar to the wind system that I made. So let's just kind of breeze through it. So the animal footsteps are static. So there's an audio cue blueprint, and these audio sources are placed very clearly on the map in specific regions, as I showed you here. Yeah. And now let's just open the bird call blueprint. So again, very similar to the wind gust system that I showed you earlier. And this is directly going to the bird source blueprint, which is like an actor blueprint that I'm going to call again. So where's the bird call blueprint? Yeah, this is the bird call blueprint. So again, very similar to what I did with the wind system. The only difference is that I am choosing 10 different points instead of 20, because I wanted the intensity to be low, and when it comes to the reactive sounds, this increases. I'll show it to you later. Let's look at the reactive side of my wildlife system. So let's first focus on the higher intensity bird calls. So for doing that, I have this blueprint called Bird Burst. What this is basically a different version of the bird call blueprint. So instead of the for loop calling 10 points, this for loop is calling 35 points at the same time. And I'm using the same bird source blueprint as before. And when the event begin play is triggered, which is like when the level loads again, I am calling this custom event, and I have set the lifespan of this event to be just 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, the higher intensity bird calls will again die down. Okay, now let's look at the twig that is controlling the whole thing. Looks super simple, it's just a model of a twig, but this single twig is handling all the reactive logic behind this wildlife system. So if you go to the event graph, you'll see there's a lot of things happening here. So what I'm doing is I'm controlling the wildlife footstep sounds, the bird calls, and the twig breaking sound just through this one single blueprint. So what is happening here? We'll go step by step in this. So I am checking if the player character and the twig overlaps. If they do, what I'm telling it to do is basically play this twig breaking sound at the actor location, and after it I'm asking it to spawn the bird burst blueprint. And for the location of the bird burst, what I'm doing is getting the actor location, and I'm breaking the vector into x, y, and z. And also I am adding this random float in range for the x, y, and z values, adding up both of these and making a vector, so that every single time the bird burst happens, it happens in a very random location to make it sound more natural. And after that, I am basically disabling the twig breaking event, and after just a 5 second of cooldown time, I'm setting it back on again. So that is how the reactive bird sounds are being controlled. Now looking at the animal footsteps, there's a custom event called mute animal footsteps. So what I've done is in the level components, I have selected all the animal footstep sources and I've tagged them all in this animal footsteps tag, and I've created an array out of the all actors, and for I've made a for each loop which is being cast to the ambient sound just to get the audio component out of it. And for that audio component, I'm adding a fade out which is just 1 second long and making it completely quiet. And after a duration of 10 seconds, the actors are being called again, and there's a for each loop and ambient sound. So basically the whole thing that is happening here is being repeated just for a fade in, to make sure that the animal footstep sounds uh, which are being completely eliminated go back up again in a more natural way. So that was the whole procedural and reactive system that I designed. Now coming to the more simpler parts of the level that bring it together and make it a whole immersive experience. So there's a room tone that is filling out the frequency spectrum and making it sound more full. Apart from that, there's also player footsteps. So these are super simple, nothing complicated. These aren't even controlled by an animation blueprint. What is happening is I'm playing these player footsteps at regular increments of time. So I think it's around zero point 0.3 or zero point 0.4 seconds. So these are small things, but these bring the whole level together. Apart from that, to give it a sense of outdoors, there's a reverb zone which encompasses this whole level and makes it sound like you're actually in the forest besides a lake. So this was my technical sound design demo called Envirosonics. I hope you really liked it. And thank you all for watching. Like, share, and maybe subscribe, because I'll be posting more of my personal projects and things that I've done. Bye.